amongst yourselves.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Oundle Town Council meeting for Tuesday, 16th of December. It says in the agenda, this is a full town meeting, and it's live. Really live for now. So I'm going to move straight on to the agenda. Take item 25124 first, apologies for absence. We have apologies from councillors Fordham, Clark, Fuller and Gray. Everybody else is here, lovely. So we have to accept those apologies for absence. Do I have something to propose? We accept those apologies for absence. Councillor Chappell, thank you. Do I have a seconder to take those? Councillor Quartermain, thank you. All those in favour? Wonderful. Thank you. Item 25.125, declarations of interests. I'll read all of these out. We'll take in the declarations at the end. We're asked to receive and consider any declarations of interest from members and officers under Section 50 of the Local Government Act 2000 for the following matters. To item 125.01 to declare any disposal of pecuniary interests. 125.02 to declare any other interests. 125.03 to consider any request for dispensation. 125.04 to report any gifts or hospitality accepted over the value of £50. And 125.05 to report any inappropriate gifts or hospitality offered. Does anybody have any interests to declare under any of those items? Wonderful, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to item 25.126, minutes of previous meetings. And the proposal is that we approve and sign the minutes of the Full Council meeting held on the 18th of November 2025 as an accurate record. Question one, does anybody want to make any changes or suggest or propose any changes to those minutes? Oh, good. In which case, can I ask for a proposer to accept those minutes, please? Councillor Adams, thank you. And a seconder to accept those minutes. Councillor Chesser, thank you. All those in favour? Wonderful, thank you very much. We now move on to item 25.127, public participation from interested parties or members of the public. I think here we have a participation or presentation, I should say, from William McCormack. Please, the floor is yours. I should say that this section is for a maximum of 15 minutes, and our standing orders say nobody can speak for more than 3. So I'm going to guess it'll be somewhere between those two.
Okay. Where Good evening, councillors. My name is Will McCormack from Harris McCormack Architects up in Wanstead, and I'm here to have a little bit of a chat with you tonight about the site on New Road. The site, I believe, has been in discussion with yourselves, with the potential purchaser, Greenhill Developments, but it's fairly complicated. There are some issues and there are some discussions going on about the site, and I just thought it would be better if we spoke to you about it. So slide 1 here shows the development site, potential development site. It's the site of the old garages just behind Pickup is garage. And what you will see on here, the black dotted line is roughly the site boundary. You've got the footpath at the top at the northern end that leads from New Road onto the recreation ground. And we highlighted some of the main trees which run down the western boundary. The green lines are the canopies, so there's nothing untoward about that. If we move, please, onto slide 2. This is it's a little bit more interesting. So at the north of the site, we have, can I come over here and point?
Yeah.
Just be careful of the wires.
Yeah, thank you. So at the northern side of the site, we have, roughly speaking, the footpath that leads from New Road onto the back of the wreck. The site in the black dotted line, as before. This time, the trees, I've taken the canopies off, but this red line with the red hatching is indicative of the likely, what we call root protection area for these mature trees that run along the western boundary. As it stands at the moment, the trees are outside of the application site and they're under your control on your land, town council land. In addition to that, there is a hatched, it was purple, but it's not come out very well, a hatched area running down the west-hand side, which is 3 metres wide, which I understand is in discussion with the council as a potential land swap from the footpath to this strip of land. What you can see, I'm not here to discuss or negotiate land issues. This is purely on the physical issues of the site. What you will see is if that 3 metres comes, is effectively swapped for the footpath, the majority of these trees then become part of the application site. If we could have a look at slide 3. Thank you very much. Again, this is very, very, very early in the concept. We haven't put any real time into design because there are some fundamental issues which are potentially prohibiting any development or redevelopment of the site. But as an indicative layout, there are 4 residential units shown there. Plots 1 and plots 4 proposed to be detached properties, and plots 2 and 3 are various semi-detached properties. We're looking at sort of 2/3 bedrooms for these. Again, this is very, very indicative. It's concept. There's no design gone into this, but it's just to show where we feel we would be looking. And again, Lisa, if you may, on image 4. So there's just a photograph taken from opposite the tire place, looking down at the side at the top, and at the bottom again. There's a very, very basic artist impression, 3D mock-up of potentially what could go there. Now, this is all hearsay, really, in terms of planning. The site was the subject of a pre-planning application in 2023. A different applicant, not my client, approached North Northants Council with a pre-app to demolish the garages and build 1 residential unit on the site. A very detailed response came back from North Northants. The bones of it was that the principle of development, the principle of demolition and replacement could be looked on as being acceptable, but obviously there are an awful lot of details and a lot of policy issues to sort out. One of the things that was flagged up was the trees, because of their proximity to the site. We've gone 1 step further than that and identified potentially the prohibitive presence of the trees in their root protection areas. It literally covers the whole of the site. So if an application was submitted and it was compliant with everything with policy, it would almost certainly fall down purely on the basis that the trees are there and it's impossible to build or redevelop the site without impacting on the root protection areas. So the discussions that have been had so far, I believe, between our client and town council revolve around the town council's potential to remove these trees. Obviously, taking trees out, taking healthy trees out, is an emotive subject, and it's something that it's not something that we certainly like to do. But in this case, there would be a proposal for some replacement planting, some mitigation tree planting. I believe that's been discussed to some degree. But the fact of the matter is, with the trees here, it is very unlikely that any redevelopment of this site will take place because they're just, the root protection areas will be impacted, and then the proximity of residential dwellings to the trees, there will always be pressure on the town council to be pruning the trees, to be cutting the trees, to be permanently looking after them. It's outside the conservation area. To my knowledge, there are no preservation orders on the trees. The trees aren't. We haven't had a tree survey done yet because obviously this is very early days. But the trees aren't particularly good species or good examples. However, having said that, they do make a contribution. They do have an amenity value, and not least of all, we have a biodiversity value. The second point about the trees being on the site is more of a timing issue, really. But if the trees are outside a red line boundary, then they will not be taken into account for biodiversity net gain. If the trees are within the site and we're proposing or they're proposed to be taken down, then that will generate an uplift in biodiversity net gain, which would be virtually, which would be very, very difficult. I'm not going to say impossible, we haven't run the numbers yet, but it would be very difficult to increase and provide the biodiversity net gain that the policy demands, 10% increase, within the same red line boundary, which would then bring into issues such as buying biodiversity units, which it changes the feasibility, the financial viability of the scheme. So there is a discussion to be had if the council are minded to accept removing the trees and potentially accept the land swap. As I say, that's not my area of expertise. But if that was minded to be acceptable, deemed acceptable, there would need to be a discussion about timing, because time could also have quite a big impact on the proposed development. And I think that's it. Quite happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Excuse me, I'm not sure if that's the right protocol.
Thanks, Will. Could I ask if anybody has any questions? And we will be discussing this later on as part of our agenda, of course, but if you're happy to take questions now, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, of course.
Adam, hi.
I mean, why does somebody want to develop this site?
The garages are redundant. They're partially boarded up. Last time I saw them, I don't think any of them are being used. It's not a particularly attractive site, and there's an opportunity there to make the site more attractive and provide some housing. We're looking at low scale. The pre-app that was put in a couple of years ago was for a single unit on the entire site. I think it's 5 bedrooms. What we are potentially looking at is more smaller units, which will also provide some, I wouldn't say low-cost housing, but it gives a slightly more balanced provision of housing in the town. And we would hope that it would improve the look of that project.
Take Phil and then you.
I noticed the garage with the light blue doors to the side.
Yeah.
I assume that's owned independently.
That's outside the application stuff.
Yeah. And do you know if that's used?
Yes.
I believe so. Yeah.
No.
Well, I can't see any provision for cars in any way.
So the parking, as I say, is very, very, very conceptual, but the proposal would be, so the proposal would be, these are the houses here, and the spaces in between are basically, you've got tandem car parking, so there's at least 2 car parking spaces. Again, we haven't run the numbers. A certain amount depends on the land at the back, the size of the houses. This is basically, we've got 2 cars for each of them. We would need some visitor parking. So again, we haven't really decided on the size of the units, because the size of the houses, the number of bedrooms, dictates the number of car parking spaces.
So there's no green space at all?
The green space is potentially down the back along here.
But that only assumes that we agree to a land swap.
Absolutely, and also, if the trees are prohibitive or the land swap doesn't work, then it's highly likely that there'll be a different scheme. This is just a very, very basic concept of what potentially could be if everything falls into place. We haven't designed or discussed a brief without that yet, other than this is something that he was looking at potentially pursuing. But again, if the trees can't be resolved, then it won't happen. But please don't think that this is the final scheme. This is not a planning application that we're trying to justify.
Thank you. Owen?
It appears that it would be difficult to build anything on there without removing trees, right? Is that right? So you can, without removing trees, the root spread.
The root protection, we haven't, to my knowledge, the previous pre-app didn't include the planning officer mentioned the fact that there was no tree report submitted, and said this needs to be done. If we have a tree report, our experience is we know what root protection areas are. We may not have got it exactly right, but it's going to at least cover the first half of the site, which makes it virtually impossible to move.
You've talked about a land swap. What's in it for the council? What benefit will we get from
As far as I understand,
what
apologies,
proposing to give us?
this isn't my area of expertise, but my understanding is that the footpath that links New Road to the recreation ground is part of the site, the application site. So it would be owned by my client, and there have been discussions about swapping the footpath for the strip of land at the back. That's as much as I know, I'm afraid.
Why is it a problem if it's owned by your client? They still have to maintain it as a footpath.
Again, it wasn't that. I don't think it is his suggestion that the footpath is taken out. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm here primarily just to present the sort of the concept of what could happen and identify some of the physical issues that will need to, whether it's us, whether it's somebody else, if the site is to be developed, this will need to be sorted out because it won't happen around.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? No? Will, thank you very much for coming
It's a
along
pleasure. Thank you very
and
much for your
presenting.
time. Thank you.
We will be discussing this later on, but for now, I think that's
Answered as many questions as you have, or yeah.
I mean, there may be other questions, but we'll be discussing that later on.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Happy Christmas, everybody.
Yes, you too. Thank you. So item 125, item 25, 128, consideration of requests from interested parties. We don't have any such requests. So I'll move on to item 25, 129, Northampton Council, and welcome Councillor Simon Farrell.
Apologies, I've missed the last few meetings, but it clashed with the local plan and revised group that I'm a member of. That meeting is now Thursday this week, so you've got me. So just a few things happening at Northampton at the moment. The corporate plan was approved by council last week. I've now shared a few notes by email with you. So that was formally approved by full council last week. The proposed annual delivery plan got occasional mention within that. I've said I think that's a really good development. I look forward to seeing it. The debate about that. So we'll be pressing on to say actually that's really important because having these big strategic plans are great, but actually measuring them and measuring progress is things really important. I think you probably would have seen, I think you've got it on your agenda, community governance review is now kicked off. So that again was approved by council last week. There was an initial consultation process and now started through until the February 2026. So that's out and running. Space 605, I know that it's on the agenda as well, I think today, but following the meeting that John led about a month ago, since then I've engaged across the border with Cambridgeshire, actually it was a Cambridgeshire councillor who's also a Huntingdonshire councillor, and from that a meeting is being set up for early January, which will involve representatives from Cambridgeshire County Council, including a director level appointment, I think, Peterborough City Council, an executive director level appointment, hopefully. Certainly they've engaged so far. Representative from Huntingdonshire District Council, I think that'll be a council representative. I'm going to be joining that. I've engaged with Northampton to see if I can engage a senior officer. Sadly, we've been bumped a couple of levels, so I started executive director level. I think I'm now down to a senior officer, but it's an involvement, and I'm keen to get John invited to that as well. The chair of Elton Parish Council is on the invitation list as well, so I think John John as representative of the parish town council group would be good. So, and then equally, I've written to Councillor Chris McGiffin, who's the portfolio holder for highways, and had a positive reply back from him. Not a solution, but a positive reply, and actually he did take the willingness to attend the next meeting,
Oh, good.
and in fact other meetings involved around it. So I'd say a positive response from Chris of that. So he's he gets on with stuff and gets stuff ready. So draft budget went to executive today. It goes to council in January. There will be some changes likely to that because they've had to draft on the basis of some information from government, and there's more information due from government imminently. The news is that at the moment the proposal is for a 4.99% council tax increase, which is the maximum allowable, and then 21.3 million worth of savings, efficiencies and income proposals. I would suspect that the final version will have to see an increase in those savings requirements as the council seeks to balance the budget, which it legally has to do. So that's that, and I'll leave the administration to justify that proposal. Protect Where We Play, I was successful in proposing a motion to council last week. We've got cross-party support, basically responding to the proposal to remove Sport England as a statutory consultee, their status as a statutory consultee in the planning system. So it's a proposal for Labour government to remove them and I think others from that status. And we've responded by joining the Better Pay campaign, signing the position, completing the consultation stage. We don't believe that's a good idea. We believe there are real benefits to having Sport England as a statutory consultee, protecting playing fields. There will be able to be a consultee in the future, but being a statutory consultee and being a consultee is a slightly different kettle of fish. And we fear that the removal of that status will put at risk playing fields and other sports facilities developments because they offer a service beyond that. So I was very pleased to have got support cross-party, cross-council for that. And then final key point to share, and again I shared some information previously, and I know that you're fully aware of this, for the local plan, the consultation was originally intended to be Jan-Feb, it's now looking more likely Feb-March, maybe even March-April. So this is the Regulation 18 consultation, which is the informal consultation stage. So the Hunts local plan, which I know is on your agenda later, that's now the formal Reg 19 stage. Don't ask me what it says in Reg 19, I just know it's called Reg 19. But basically, sort of, that's at the formal final consultation stage. A Reg 18 is the earlier consultation stage, and that's the important stage to be involved because that's when things can move and change. So, including with this will be an indication of the call for sites, but actually that information is currently available. There is a website with an indication of all the sites that have been identified across the area, be that for housing, employment, mixed development and so on. I'm happy to share the link for that, but basically there will be a chance to comment on those call for sites. And at some point in the process, I'll know more about it on Thursday, there'll be a process by which the planning team or the local plan team will look at those call for sites and determine whether or not they merit going forward into the local plan or whether or not they're not appropriate because they're on the high risk floodplain, poor access, blah, blah, blah. And again, I think Thursday is determining some of the objective criteria for why something might be included, why something might not be included. There'll be plenty of subjective criteria that we share during the consultation process as to why things are good or bad. And one thing, again, I think I shared this, in the current local plan, there is key areas or priority areas, market towns, as the two key focus areas where houses might be built, and then sort of the rest. So if other houses are built, that's great, but the numbers are really focused on the priority towns, Kettering, Corby, Wellingborough and Rushden, and then the market towns. The proposal at the moment within the proposed local plan is to have priority towns, the same for market towns, the market towns, and then key villages. So there will be then some expectation of developments into key villages. And at the moment, they're still working on the full criteria for key villages, but logically, or with the information I've shared, it's things like villages that can cope with more development. So it won't be Blatherwick. I think I can say that fairly surely, because there's nothing in Blatherwick. But it will be, there's a school, there's a post office, there's a pub, there's a community facility, and so on. So that's a logical reason why those places might be identified. Again, there's many other reasons why those places might not be the best places, because they've had lots of housing development in recent years, but again, that's sort of, let's say, an objective criteria being developed to then frame what goes into the development.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions on anything
Thank you,
I've
Simon.
shared, or maybe even something.
Anybody have any questions about what Simon has fed to us? We'll talk about some of those items in a moment or two, but no? Wonderful. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thanks, Alan.
I'll now move on to the next item, which is item 25/130, Town Matters. 25/130/01 to receive an update following the meeting to discuss the A605 traffic situation and agree next steps. I'm hopeful, rather than confident, that everyone has read all the papers. There have been a couple of amendments to the paper that I sent out, or that was sent out last Thursday. One attendee has reminded me we also discussed the dual carriageway as a potential relief to the weighted traffic. And we also talked about an independent traffic report, which might be useful. But no proposals have been made nor any funds agreed to be spent, because we're all representative of councils and we haven't gone back to councils to ask for more money. Where we are at the moment with the A605 is we are going to, I'm going to draft a letter to Highways, send it around to the local parishes. There were 12 or 13 who are involved to get their input. Drafting by committee is never good or easy, but we'll see where we go from that. Simon's been very good at sending me copies of letters that have been sent about the A43, which has been successful in achieving traffic calming measures. The general feeling of the meeting was we're unlikely to see much luck in getting things like dual carriageways in, but we're more likely to see some headway if we can get traffic calming measures like better speed controls and other traffic calming measures. So, work in progress. It was I think it's fair to say it was a constructive meeting and some progress was made, but unfortunately Highways weren't there. Hey ho. Does anybody have any questions or want to make any comment about progress that's been made so far? Phil?
I'm simply appalled at Highways weren't there. This is a major issue all the way on the length of it, and how on earth they can justify not being there, I don't know.
Is a very good question. The only thing that I can say on that is that apparently the A605, although it's of strategic importance and Highways should look after strategic roads, Highways don't see that the A605 is part of their remit, but then NNC don't see it as part of their remit either. So we're working on that. Simon's working hard on that, and I'll report progress as we get there. Simon, do you want to add anything to that?
They sent their apologies. The A43 meeting, they said that perhaps a very good, but actually a more junior member of staff. So the member of staff has been very, very positive in responding to queries and so on, but equally she wasn't. I don't believe that she's a decision maker. So again, the challenge is we really want decision makers to have a decent conversation, and hopefully we get Chris McGibbon involved.
It will be one of those things where we hasten slowly. Move on to item 25/131, council matters. First item 130/101 to receive the mayor's report. The typo in there, we've got a new councillor called Mike Adams. So I've changed that, Mike.
Yeah, it hasn't been before, but you get the gist.
Yeah. Any questions on my report? In my report, you'll see that I noted that the Northamptonshire Community Foundation Awards ceremony that I went to, we saw volunteer action lauded for their contribution to the community, and also Annual Fringe were part of the closing ceremony. So I think, and I can't do this without council approval, I think it would be good to drop them a letter of congratulations for their success. So I'm not going to put it to a vote. Do I generally have people's agreement that this will be a good thing to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great, thank you. So although I wasn't called onto the stage, I felt some tangential benefit. Item 25-13102 to receive the clerk's report. You've all had a copy of that. Are there any questions on the clerk's report? I've got a couple, and it might be Phil, you can answer one of them. Item 25-7102 on the highways report. Do we know what the situation is, Lisa or Phil, with regard to the bollards outside Tesco's? Because we were going to replace those, and highways were supposed to come out and have a look at the hole to make sure it was okay. Have they come back at all?
No,
Could we make a note, could we make that an action point, Lisa, from this to Chase Highways, please? And then item 25-7201, I contacted Barnwell Ashton about boundary changes, and I also mentioned the Northamptonshire Business Crime Partnership thing. Barnwell aren't interested in boundary changes. There's some work to do on the MBCP thing, which I've given to, or asked David Fuller to look at. I've had nothing back from Ashton, and we're having a separate report from Grantham later on.
Are Barnwell interested in the retail crime partnership?
Yes, but what they're saying is that they thought that they were part of a retail crime initiative which was sent out, born out of the Rushton Lakes situation, but what I'm being told is that that is only if they pay for it, and they haven't paid for it. So Rushton Lakes have said, we've got this wonderful scheme that holds the whole of everybody, but they haven't said you have to pay for it to belong, and David Fuller is saying it's not as good anyway. So work to be done. And a further report. Item 25-13103 to receive an update on the strategy plans. Again, that's just a receipt thing because it's just been keeping up to date and confirming that we're still making progress. Not always as quickly as would be perfect, but nonetheless progress is still being made on most strategic fronts. Any questions on that? Okay. Item 25-13104 to receive an update regarding the Christmas market. It's just a verbal thing. I thought it was excellent. I think the council staff should be congratulated on the work that they did. I've had 5 or 6 members of the public stop in the street and say it was a great market, lots of people there, busier than they've seen for a long period of time, lots of people from outside the area, which is fabulous. Villance from the Business Association also said it was one of the best he's seen, and most retailers saw an increase in trade, which was fabulous. How many councillors went to the Christmas market? All of us, most of us.
I didn't.
You did, but everyone did. General feeling, yeah.
Yeah, just a comment. I heard that it was because there's 120 plus stalls there, is probably the biggest Christmas market in Northamptonshire. So I think, Morag in particular needs to be congratulated for that.
Yeah, I think everybody worked on it, so I think Morag did it, but I think everybody worked on it, so
Absolutely.
good, thank you for that, Phil, that's great. Sorry, Ian, Phil.
Yeah. My only comment really would be, it was a great market. However, it was skewed a bit too much towards the food and drink.
Yeah.
Several of my customers said that they were hoping to see more gifty sort of stalls to buy Christmas stuff, and they were a bit disappointed with that. There were some inside QVH, but a lot of people weren't finding that. They were simply walking straight by because their eyes were going towards the stalls along there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Feedback, I think, if we can do anything about that. Owen?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment that I was pleased to see that the reindeer were pretty relaxed with it. There were no issues. So I was at the Edinburgh Christmas Festival last weekend, and there was a bit of a hoo-ha over a couple of guys who turned up with some owls in actually on Royal Mile. Big crowd there, so the reindeer were pretty popular here as well. but I think they got into a spot bother with them. But something to bear in mind.
I think we will be discussing radios during the year.
I didn't go for some health reasons, I find it difficult.
Yeah,
But I've talked to lots of people and I've had very, very positive feedback from
Good.
everybody who I've spoken to.
Yeah, that's fun. Good to hear. Thank you, Alison.
Just from the point of retailers' point of view, a little bit of feedback. We've had the late night shopping sort of combined with the Christmas fair and things. And a few of the retailers have commented that Christmas lights used to be switched on in advance of the Christmas market, so that you'd have, say, the Thursday evening, late night shopping, lights would be switched on, and then they would be on all day for the Christmas market. So that's actually come back from quite a lot of retailers when we've been organising the late night shopping to see whether it could be a combined thing in future years. So I don't know if that's time to mention that now or.
I think it's a perfect time to mention it. I think that's good feedback. Thank you. And perhaps when we wrap this up to the team, Lisa, you can include that as an idea. For me, switching the lights on in daylight, then it wasn't quite as wow as it might be. I think the lights are fabulous. Maybe switch them on the evening before would make it an even more of an event. But something to be considered for next year. Thank you all very much. Item 25, 130, 105, we're being asked for an approval here. So, sorry, Max.
No, I'm putting my hand up for when you're ready.
Participation. Other than Max, we're being asked to approve signing the lease between the Town Council and the St Albans Scout Group for the use of the Joan Strong Centre. Are there any questions, Max?
Yes, I'm not quite sure what it is we're being asked to approve because I couldn't see any details about the lease, either in terms of the duration of the lease or the monetary value of the lease.
I think it's all been discussed before, and what happened is when Emma was
I couldn't see it in the
finalising.
pack anywhere.
No, I don't think it was, when Emma was.
December, we haven't actually got any in front of it.
They're not already been sent out.
I've only seen November.
Oh,
That's good, it's better tomorrow.
okay. So that is an issue because there will be a number of suppliers. I mean, yes, I'm in there, but there are a number of suppliers who would expect to be paid in December, so we can't approve it. I suppose we pay it and approve it in January retrospectively. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, Ian, are you still prepared to propose that we approve the payments for November?
Yes.
Wonderful. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Affleck. Thank you. All those in favour? Wonderful. Thank you very much. We now move on to a series of agenda items, and I'm going to take them in reverse order this world. We're going to take item 25/132/05 first, because those are the minutes that need to be received before we can move to item 25/132/04, the precept, which, as Councillor Chappell has, we need to pass before we can really discuss the budget, if we're going to discuss the budget at all, because we need to know that the precept has been passed. So then we can discuss item 25/132/03. Unfortunately, I wasn't at last week's F&GP, so some of the issues we're going to be discussing aren't in line with the proposal that's included within the pack, because the numbers were changed at the F&GP meeting. Nonetheless, I want to recognise the work that was done, because it was a very long meeting. And I just want to manage it. If this finance debate becomes too prolonged, we will need to make a proposal to extend the meeting. We only allowed 2 hours for this, and there is going to be, I suspect, quite the debate around the item we had presented to us earlier on. So if you're going to speak, great, please be succinct, and I will be referring to standing orders. So no councillor can speak for more than 5 minutes, No councillor may exercise the right of reply and is invited to do so by the chairman, and any interruptions are only allowed on a point of order. So I want to kind of control the debate that way. So item 25/13205, to receive the F&GP Purposes Committee meeting minutes from the 9th of December. They seem quite clear to me. Are there any questions to the F&GP committee? None. We don't have to propose to accept them, we've just received them, so we know what they've said. So item 25/13204 is to approve the precept. Is this for the next item or the previous item? That's the item I'm about to begin, okay. To approve the precept for 26. So F&GP have proposed precept of 587,761, an increase in the precept of 4%, which will mean an average council tax increase of 2.4%. That average council tax rise will reduce if the precept requirements remains the same, because we'll have more houses within the area to share the cost. And if as a result of any redrawing of any parish boundaries, we might see that reduce still further. So the proposal, I think, from F&GP is a precept increase of 4%. I will take comments and questions. I think James will go first and then David.
Thank you. At F&GP, when we discussed the budget, we subsequently discussed additional grants for this forthcoming year.
Right.
So I have a difficulty, a precept, before we discuss potential changes to the budget, which were agreed at F&GP, because we had already agreed the budget. The only route that was agreed to actually amend the budget in light of further decisions then taken by F&GP was as part of this budget discussion. And if we agree the precept first, then I don't know what that does to the budget.
David.
Well, it's basically the same point, because by approving a budget, it automatically sets the precept, because the budget tells you how much you're going to have in terms of income. It tells you what your expenditure is, and the difference is the precept figure. So actually, what I actually sought to make clear before the meeting was that I didn't think the precept needed to be a separate item at all. We discussed the budget, and once we've approved the budget, it will set a precept automatically. And in fact, just building the point that James made, there was a discussion, as it were, after a fairly fraught discussion around the issue of precept, etc., on budgeting issues, particularly around grants, which has led to a paper that I circulated in prior to this meeting, to give them, as it were, a bit of an opportunity to reflect on that, because it's something I want to propose when we look at the budget.
Okay, let's look at the budget in a minute, Max.
I think it's important, and I'm not just playing with words, we didn't just discuss the precept of budget, but we actually agreed and recommend such to this meeting. And I think it's important to realise that a budget has been agreed for recommendation to this meeting.
And the proposal now is to amend that recommendation, which is why I wanted to take minutes first, so we understood the starting point. Mike.
I agree with that. And also in the F&GP meeting prior to that meeting, prior to the last full council meeting, we also came up with a budget that was recommended. And the only thing that was really asked for at that meeting, although it went a bit further, the full council meeting, was whether the precept went up by 0% or 8% or something between it. But at the last F&GP meeting, the recommendation was that the budget is proposed to full council with a 4% precept increase. In other words, the budget and the precept was all agreed and proposed.
So go back to what I said a moment ago, which is that F&GP, in their meeting last week, proposed a precept of 587,761, an increase in precept of 4%, which means an average council tax increase of 2.4%. That's what FNGP recommended to come to the full council. Of course, the recommendation is not a decision. It's simply a recommendation. So we can, and I will guillotine this if necessary, we can discuss the budget that's in front of us. In my view, we should only be discussing items. It's not up to us, I don't think, to discuss operating items because those are the costs of running the business and that's the clerk's domain, not ours. I don't think we should be discussing repairs and maintenance because that's estate's expertise, not ours. I don't think we should be discussing reserves because that's largely estate's expertise, not the general council's. But we can discuss discretionary items. So who wants to discuss discretionary items and what would you propose we change? Which items and by how much? Max?
Maybe cutting straight to the chase, I would like to propose the recommendations of the Finance Committee be accepted by full council.
I'll second that.
I will. I didn't hear the second. We'll take that proposal. I just want to ask for a debate whether anybody has any questions around the process before we move into turning proposals or comments on the process. And then we'll move into proposals as quickly as we can. Okay, good. James.
So, having passed the budget recommendation at NGP, we then did receive a request from, and the name of it's left me for a second.
David.
CUB.
Oh, CAB, sorry.
Where they made it very clear that they would like more money, and during the debate of the proposal, it had been made very clear to me that the route, that request for an increase we discussed as part of the recommendation from Finance, and that this was the route to put it in. So, given that that decision was taken by Finance and General Purposes after approving the budget, this is the only opportunity that I have to then put forward the CAB's request, where we have received a very clear request from a very worthwhile cause, and as was discussed, as is discussed in those papers, I think our grants budget does not give us the headroom that I think we're going to ultimately want in the next financial year to help them out.
Okay. So is there a thought as to what you think this should increase by?
My personal proposal would be to increase the grants budget by £5,000.
From how much?
It's a total of £20,000 plus 30 for the QVH. That's what's in the current budget.
So 25, because QVH has already sort of been approved, I think.
QVH has already been agreed by a previous council meeting. So you would increase the amount from 587,761.
Can you help me with which budget line or which Excel line that is?
You look at the summary on it, it's the total budget. I'm going through that. This is the summary of that something comes from here.
If you look at Excel lines 55 through 60, you've got arts grant, community support, ongoing provision for QVH, and there's a line for King Charles, although clearly that's not valid.
It's that one there, James, so that's the summary. But if you go on
It would be helpful to know what the numbers were.
So the version that was sent out, the detail one, it has lines for 5,300 grants arts, and then grants for community support, which is 15, sorry, the arts was 5,000, The community support is 15,000.
Right.
You've got the QPH number. So as David said, the total of the arts and the community support is 20.
And what are you proposing guys to do?
I would, based on the description from CAB of reduction in grants that they're getting from NNC and other funding bodies, I personally would like to have made up the whole thing, but I recognise that that was a very significant number in 5 digits. So I have come to a number of £5,000.
Okay. In a moment, we'll take that as an amendment to the original proposition, but will there be any other changes? David?
I mean, I think what
Sorry,
you said about,
Before we start, if it's to combine the repairs and maintenance budget, it's not for this meeting. I think it's a finance committee meeting first. It's to change the grants first. Please go ahead.
I think that makes it very difficult because the proposal that I indicated I would make involves altering a number of lines, some which the mayor is unhappy about being altered, and if that's the decision of the council, that's fair enough. The way that I did it enabled the precept figure to remain exactly the same precept figure as was approved within the FGP, but to actually look at some of those figures and see if there were ways in which we could achieve an increase in the grants budget. In fact, the way I did it was to end up with a grants budget that could increase by as much as 8,800. And ideally, that's what I would like to propose. And if that doesn't succeed, I would then happily second the proposal to increase the grants budget by 5. That, I think, effectively, we don't then compromise anywhere else, effectively means an increase on the precept figure that the FGP were recommending.
So we have, as I understand at the moment, there are 2 proposals. And we'll take them in reverse order, I think. Proposal 1 will be that we increase the precept by 4%, and therefore the average council tax increase at whatever it was, I said 2 point, give me a second. 2.4%, or we amend that proposal to increase the precept to 592,761, which will be a council tax increase of 4.9% and an average council tax, sorry, precept increase of 4.9% and an average council tax increase of 3.2%. Before I start to move into voting, are there any other issues? I think David Ward was saying we should be happy with either.
No, I'd be happy with my own proposal, frankly. But if I can't have my own proposal, then I'm very happy with Councillor Adams' suggestion, because it's the next best option.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we're going to get into each budget line discussion, I don't know how many of the councillors we've got here want to get into that level of detail. I would prefer that to be an FGP discussion and then brought back to council for approval by those who really care about individual budget lines. The next FGP meeting is in February, so we can approve them at the February council meeting or at the March council meeting, and they'll be in place for the new financial year in April. So there's one motion from Max, which is to increase the precept by 4%. Do we have a second for that motion? Mike, thank you. But before we have that motion, we're going to hear the amended motion, which I think is going to be proposed by James, but correct me if I'm wrong, which is that we increase the precept to 592,761, an increase in the precept of 4.9%, and an increase in the average council tax bill of 3.2%. Proposed by James, seconded by David. So we're going to vote on the amendment first because that's the rule we have to go through. So it's proposed by James, 592 precept, 4.9% increase, average council tax increase 3.2%. All those in favour of that amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the amendment is 8.2. 8.2. So then it's carried into, so the original motion must therefore be withdrawn because it's entirely opposite. So the motion that's ahead, in front of the council that has just been approved is that we increase the precept to 592,761. Precept 5%, and average council tax bill increase of 3.2%. And I propose, unless anybody objects here, I propose that we discuss the individual budget line changes in the discretionary items lines at our next FNGP meeting in February. That's my proposal. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Mike. So all those in favour of deferring the individual line items to February, in favour? Good. I love unanimity. If only I could spell it. So that's, we've received the minutes, we've approved the precept, and we will approve the budget as part of that and discuss the individual line items in February.
Sorry, is the budget approved as a number?
At the number of 592.
Yeah. That's not
And
gonna
how
change.
we, sorry?
That's not going to change.
That's not going to change. We've got a precept now. That precept will go to NNC. It cannot change. The only way we can change our budgets from now is to get more money in our income stream, or we get less money in our income stream, and we change our spending allowances, or we use reserves. But I'm not going to open the reserves policy discussion again tonight. We'll discuss that in February. So I don't think we need to discuss any more item 125, 132 or 3 to approve the budget because the precept has been approved and the individual line items will be adjusted at the February council meeting. Are we all comfortable with that? Good, because you voted on it, so I'm just checking. We move on then to item 25, 132.06 to approve the proposal for the Place Informatics visitor data information, trips off the tongue, for Annual. I would assume everybody's read the proposal. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Ian, or should we move straight to questions?
No, the only thing is very quickly, I think the fundamentals of marketing and what we want to do, the strategy is data. And without data, you're actually leading blind. So it's very, very simple. This actually gives us very rich and important data to look at the visitor flow into Oundle and how we can exploit it and how we can actually increase it. And it not only just goes across the pure marketing promotion, it also goes across to areas such as the markets, enterprise, bringing new businesses in, helping the local businesses, etc. And there's various means to actually exploit this data. We'll know more once it's in.
Yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to comment is we have got agreement from Place Informatics. If we get agreement tonight, they will backdate it to the 1st of December, which means we'll capture all the data for the Christmas market where everybody is coming from, which I think is going to be very useful since it's one of the biggest events of the year. So I think it's critical for what we're doing in terms of strategy. And we've got the budgets to do it for this year, and it's already been baked into the budgets for 26.
Own it, because it's one thing paying for this collection of information, unless that's actually analysed, packaged and fed back to us, we're paying for something that realistically has almost no meaning.
Yeah, good point, good question.
I think it's an excellent question. In the discussion that might be working party, we're looking at, hopefully Rebecca can be trained up because she's with the addition of that half member of staff to come in and take some of the administration duties off her. And if she's willing, that's where she will be trained up and looked at, because I think you're absolutely right. Without that point of contact, without that continuity of getting data and reporting in data, then it could just disappear into the ether, and we can't have that.
And it's a monthly subscription anyway.
Yes.
So if it fails to be used properly,
We can
just
stop it.
but we can rely on the marketing working party to drive that.
Absolutely, we'll be driving that it is essential to the data. We're going to be driving that anyway because we're going to need that data on a monthly basis.
Wonderful. Any more questions or comments? Wonderful. Do you have a second of your proposal? Councillor Adams. All those in favour of this proposal? You have unanimity.
Thank you.
Item 25/13207 to receive the interim audit report. That was received and sent out earlier today, and I think it's just for information only. Unless anybody has any comments or questions, I will just take that as a receipt.
It was complimentary, I think it's worth noting.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
So perhaps you pass that on to the relevant people. Thank you, Lisa. Item 25/133, highways matters, 13301 to receive the speed indicated advice report. Received that. Any comments or opinions on that report? Wonderful. Moving on to planning matters, items 13401, 13402 and 13403 are all around the same item. Sorry, yes, they are.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the minutes of the planning meeting were exactly with it. I mean, it was mentioned in it, but I think we could receive those. It's the next two that I think could usefully go somewhere else in the agenda.
In that case, let's deal with item 25/13401. We have the minutes from the planning committee. David, do you want to add?
I mean, they've been circulated. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, but most of the things that are actually sort of meeting in there are on our agenda somewhere anyway.
Cool. Any questions of planning committee? No, thank you. In that case, item 13402. David, do you want to make a proposal?
Yeah. Pursuant to Standing Order 3C, I would ask that council takes this item in camera. We already have planned a similar discussion later about a matter, but it strikes me that these issues are commercially sensitive and would be better discussed absent the public and at the end of the meeting. I don't want to close the meeting now and have to reopen it halfway through, so I couple that with asking that it be taken at the end of the discussion about other matters.
This is items 25/13402 and 03.
Yes.
Right, so you made that proposal. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Affleck. Thank you. All those in favour of deferring? Brilliant. So we'll move straight on to item 25/13404 and come back to 03 at the end of the meeting. So 13404 is to consider the parish boundary review and agree next steps. And David, you've been key with this.
Yeah, it's been discussed in the planning committee, it's also been discussed here, and I have prepared a draft of a possible response. Having said that, timescales for the response are now such that we could defer a decision on our response until January. The advantage of that is that there is a meeting in Blackthorn tomorrow, where Blackthorn will be considering the same issue. Essentially, the view of the planning committee was that there was little mileage in asking for adjustments to the boundaries with either Ashton or Barnwell, both of which are the other two potential ones, I can call it that. The situation with Blackthorn is arguably very different, because the thing stands out like a sore thumb in both directions, quite frankly. However, tomorrow night, what's happened is that the parish council circulated the residents of the two affected areas, Old Farm Lane and those parts of the new development which are believed to be in the parish of Blackthorn. I put it that way because it's actually astonishingly difficult to work out which ones are in the parish of Blackthorn, so that the leaflets that went out said, please check your council tax bill. If you're paying it to Arundel Town Council, please ignore the rest of what follows. If you're paying it to Blackthorn, you may want to come along to the meeting tomorrow night, i.e. the 17th, where the issue will be discussed. So whilst I put something together, and it's based around the terms of reference for the committee, because it highlights the anomalous nature of both and fits in well with own views on coalescence and chimes with Blackthorn Neighbourhood Plan's view on coalescence. I think it would be useful to await what happens at Blackthorn tomorrow, because we can still put in our response in January without seemingly having an issue.
So effectively, and it seems to make sense to me, effectively defer this item until January.
January, and I can report back.
Unless I hear any objections to that, I think we'll just take that and move on. Wonderful, thank you, and thanks for the work you've done on that so far, David. Hopefully, January meeting will be straightforward. Item 25-13405, to consider the Huntingdon draft local plan report and agree next steps. This is partly related, I think, to the A605 discussion we had earlier on and touched on by Simon. So, David, you want to add anything to your...
The planning committee asked me to put together a potential response to this local planning consultation. It's urgent because the consultation closes tomorrow.
Yes.
And my ear is being consistently bent by Elton, who have sent me 2 emails, and were delighted when I told them we'd be discussing it this evening. Obviously, since this was drafted, we had the benefit of the minutes of the meeting that the mayor had around the A605 issue. And to be frank, whilst there may be other matters about that plan about which we might express an interest, none of them are likely to very directly concern us. However, increased traffic flows along the A608 are going to concern this council greatly, because our ears are going to be bent by our parishioners. Hopefully it's only our ears that are bent, although I think a few motor cars are likely to get bent on that road as well, quite frankly. And so 2 suggested responses are in that draft. One in relation to residential development at Old Walton. The logic being that traffic wanting to go west is presumably going to go out of Old Walton development, simply turn left out of the development, drive through Elton, and arrive at the A605 at a notorious junction where there have been multiple accidents in the past. And the suggestion being that, quite frankly, the developer of that residential site, which is of a significant size, it's 163 homes, so it's going to generate a fair old amount of cash, should be asked to contribute to road improvements, but the most likely, I suspect, being traffic lights, rather like were installed at Barnwell as a sort of second best to the proposed roundabout, because roundabouts seem to be a lot more expensive than traffic lights. And the other issue is the proposed commercial developments around the people services area, which, given the passing of not 1 but 2 developments in the area of Flaxton, one way or another, mean that 605 road, which is used pretty much as a cut through from the A14 to the A1, is likely to get busier and busier. And it seems to me that we should be making the point that just because this one appears in Huntingdonshire and the rest of it is in the district of Northamptonshire, the 2 things should look at each other and say it's not sensible to have both. And since the other one's already got permission, and this is simply something that is proposed to be allocated, there is a chance this could get taken out of the plan. And so I'd like to propose that we adopt that response. If anybody wants, obviously, to change any wording or add anything to it, we could. I was struck by the live minutes of the A605 meeting that no improvements have been done to that road since 1995, which is 13 years ago. And the traffic usage on that road 30 years ago was, to my knowledge, a lot less than it is now, because I was driving that road 30 years ago and I'm still driving it to get to my office now. And it's a lot worse.
What I would, I'll take comments and questions first. I've got a couple of suggestions, but does anybody have any other comments or that they'd like to make, or suggestions they'd like to make to the response statement as drafted? I think for me, I would do two things, David. One, and it'd be interesting to get Simon's perspective. I'm not sure if that's allowed, but I'm asking anyway. One, I'd be saying that exactly that point, I'd be adding in that point that no major change has been made since 1995, and traffic will have increased significantly in that time. It might also be worth mentioning that there is an A605 action group which is looking to commission, or they're looking into the possibility of a traffic survey to identify the actual use of the road, and looking to see if there's any way of assessing the number of accidents on that road, and it would be good for the council to consider whether that's something they would support. I don't know if that's appropriate or what, but I think those two things are worth saying, because the A605 is a real problem to us and our ratepayers.
My only observation on that, Mayor, is that within the consultation document, in respect of both, there is reference to doing traffic assessments. But we could say that the traffic assessment should be informed by up-to-date data. Because it was also apparent from your meeting that the data that seems to be being relied upon is out of date. And therefore, to force developers to commission new data on which things should be based